Hello and welcome to The Working Songwriter, the show where today's best songwriters come to talk shop. I'm your host, Joe Pug. Each episode here, we host a distinguished guest and we ask them to go deep on their inspiration, on their process, on the general ups and downs of making a life in music. So, whether you're a grizzled veteran trying to figure out how to live stream using a flip phone, or else a scrappy upstart, ironically using a flip phone as a prop in your live stream, this is your show. Because ultimately, it is what every writer seeks most, an ironclad excuse to put off actually writing. Hey everybody, it's the last Friday of April 2020, and I'm glad that you're here, and I hope that you're healthy and well. This week's show is brought to you by Bandzoogle. Built by musicians and for musicians, Bandzoogle is an all-in-one platform to build a beautiful website for your music. I am old enough to remember when you had to pay somebody called a web developer to get a website made, and a web developer would always be some guy named Petya who smoked cloves and who worked seasonally as a turkey leg vendor at the local Renaissance fair. And old Petya, he would build you a website using something called DOS, and the only font that you could use was Comic Sans, or you had to pay more. And old Petya would charge you like $1,000 for that website, and then it would be obsolete immediately. But it's the future now. We don't have to deal with web developers anymore. We don't have to deal with Petya. We have Bandzoogle. Bandzoogle powers the websites of tens of thousands of musicians around the world, from weekend warriors to Grammy winners. Everything's included: hosting and a custom domain name, lots of customizable design templates, social media integrations. You can even crowdfund your next record completely commission-free with Bandzoogle. The Working Songwriter podcast listeners can go to bandzoogle.com to try it for free for 30 days. Use the promo code TWS to get 15% off the first year of any subscription. Okay, if you'd like to see me play music live in the coming months, the only place you're going to be able to do that, I'll be broadcasting from a water-damaged basement in Prince George's County, Maryland. This Sunday, April 26th on YouTube, I will be playing the entirety of my second album, The Great Despiser. That'll be 9 p.m., April 26th, this Sunday. So head on over there, search for Joe Pug, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you over there on Sunday. Finally, if you enjoy this podcast, if you'd like to help it remain a viable endeavor for me, something that would really help right now is if you would become a supporter of the show over at Patreon. Patreon is a platform that allows you to directly support creative works that you find meaningful. You just head to their site, Patreon, Patreon, and you volunteer to kick in a few bucks every month for the show, like the price of a cup of coffee. Think of it as a voluntary subscription, basically. And that would definitely help me right now in this age of coronavirus. I'll tell you that. If you're not in a place to contribute financially to the show, I totally get that. It's all good, and we will be here for free for you. Okay, this is a special episode today, kind of a hybrid episode. I've got about 25 minutes with the man, the myth, the legend, Josh Ritter, that is preceded by an interview with Jay Sweet, the executive producer of the Newport Folk Festival. And it's about something very special they're doing to help artists and songwriters in the unprecedented age of Corona. There were a few technical snags with the audio on both of these interviews. I apologize for that. That's entirely my fault. I've since conducted a few more interviews, and I think I have the problem licked now, so it won't continue on into future episodes. But my apologies for the few times that we end up with some choppy audio here and there. Thanks for being here, and I hope you enjoy these chats as much as I enjoyed having them. Founded in 1959 by George Wein and Pete Seeger, the Newport Folk Festival is the crown jewel of American music festivals. At its founding, it channeled the folk music revival of the 1960s that went hand in glove with the burgeoning counterculture. The inaugural bill featured Seeger, the New Lost City Ramblers, Odetta, and a debut of an unheralded 18-year-old Joan Baez. Most famously, Bob Dylan is the festival's beloved prodigal son. In 1962, he gave an iconic performance at the festival. His set was a sensation. And then in 1965, he returned with Paul Butterfield Blues Band as his accompaniment. He was roundly booed for abandoning folk orthodoxy and quote-unquote going electric. Legend has it that Pete Seeger wanted to cut the stage's electricity with an axe. Though the festival was a cultural touchstone, it fell into financial dire straits in the decades to come. It was on its last legs in 2008 when George Wein hired Jay Sweet to the position of executive producer. Sweet envisioned a festival that focused on its spirit and community rather than profit margin. With that spirit, he plunged forward, booking both legacy acts like John Prine, Mavis Staples, with a new generation of performers such as the Avett Brothers, Gillian Welch, and those proud sons of Rhode Island, Deer Tick. The plan worked like a charm, and the festival is now as culturally relevant as perhaps it's ever been. In the age of coronavirus, the entertainment industry is among those hardest hit. Musicians who rely on large groups of people congregating have suddenly found themselves indefinitely unemployed. The Newport Folk Foundation did not miss a beat, though. They swung into action and began awarding grants to festival alumni, using capital from an emergency fund the festival had stowed away. I wanted to talk to Jay about the festival itself and also the unprecedented move the festival made to help its artists in need, or, as Jay would call them, the folk family. Jay Sweet, thanks for being with our program. Can you talk first a little bit about the history of the Newport Folk Festival and also your history with it? How did you come to be involved with it?
Like anything, is a really fascinating tale, and it really starts with George Wein, our founder, who at 94 and a half is still going strong, and I talk to every day, and his best friend Pete Seeger, who is basically our guiding force, and they created something. I like to call it the Island for Misfit Musicians, because, for when it happened, before the bridges got there. And we always say that it was created as a safe harbor for musicians to speak their mind and speak truth to power. And that was important because at the time that it was created in 1959, Pete Seeger himself had been blacklisted from traditional media, TV and radio, because what he was saying was calling into question a lot of the mores and norms that, equal rights, or basically, any injustice that was being done to the human condition. This was the place where people could congregate safely, and it was one of the true beginnings of the counterculture. Well, a full decade before Woodstock, this was the most radical thing that had kind of ever been seen. And so, how I got started with it was as an outsider who had the opportunity to connect with George and Pete Seeger to when it was at its kind of nadir and wasn't doing very well. It kind of, I felt, lost its way. I wrote a position paper on what one should do or what one could do to bring in to glorified form. I still don't know how or why, and I count my lucky stars that they saw in me something enough to give me the chance to put my money where my mouth is, my big mouth. And it over years, the good thing is there were no expectations, or if they were, they were really low, and allowed us to experiment and to come up with a spirit that was, in some respects, directly attributable to the original blueprint that Pete and George had created in 1959. At the same time, it was opposite of what every other event in America was doing that had been born out of the original Newport festivals. Whether it be Coachella or Bonnaroo or all these other ones there, and all the people that run those are I call friends of mine, would all tell you, without Newport, they were. However, when I took over, I just said what they're doing is good for what they are trying to accomplish, but it is we're going to kind of do everything exactly the opposite, i.e., announce that our tickets are on sale and wait until all those tickets are gone before announcing one artist at a time. You have to remember, Joe, no one does that. We have no zero marketing budget. In fact, pretty much the entire budget, which is extremely limited as a nonprofit, is poured into the stipends for the artists, as well as all the causes that the artists themselves with us choose for us to make donations to. So, for the last few years, it's every single artist that, before they play the festival proper, chooses and we make a donation on the in the artist's name on their behalf to that organization before they ever step foot. And that is a little bit of why we're different than, say, a benefit. We put the money out before the show even starts. So what that weekend then becomes, as you know very well, having been there and experienced this, is really a celebration of the work that together the artists before the festival has even happened. And that's really what that's something I've been striving for, and I really feel before this crazy pandemic that we had been finally kind of hitting our full stride and operating on all cylinders. And
yeah, speaking of that crazy pandemic, can you speak to a little bit about what Newport is doing to help the people in their musical community who are affected by this?
Yeah, I appreciate you asking me that question. When the pandemic was clear from my direct relationships with the artists that this was affecting them either directly, health-wise, and economically, or a combination of both. And we decided to use all our very slim resources to on the spot, almost overnight, a Newport Festival Musician Relief Fund, which its prime focus was to help all artists who played the folk or jazz festivals or who are themselves Rhode Islanders to have emergency access, to some funds to get them to a place where they could get their feet underneath them and figure out a way to move forward. Honestly, Joe, at times it feels like I'm handing out Band-Aids on a battlefield. But I think that, I've used the perhaps bad metaphor of if I have a Snickers bar and I'm in a lifeboat with a couple of my friends after a horrible storm, I could sit and hold it in my pocket and watch all my friends wither away and starve horrible, horrible, painful deaths, and then have a Snickers bar all to myself at the end. Or I break that Snickers bar up into as many little pieces as I can, and we all share it. And we just hope and pray it's enough to get us till another miracle, or a fish jumps in the boat, or we find land, whatever that is. Right. I felt that, instead of just making sure we would remain solvent, it is really not in its DNA, as I told you from the original thing, where everybody it's a very egalitarian model. Now, this being said, not to put too fine a point on it, but with the uncertainty of our own events and with the uncertainty of what lies before us as a festival, it's a really scary time for us. Yeah. Because, like I said, we ourselves are, not in a really solid spot because we just feel like, at that moment, in these moments, like right now, these people need it. And we have a very little amount of it, but that has also put us in a very precarious position for our own future. But, I think it's just in the DNA of, I think, to let, hope that all the good works we've done together as a group, as a folk family, when that people will be there for us should we need that.
That is a noble endeavor, and I hope everything's going to be all right, not only with the musicians but also with the festival. I'd be remiss if, before I let you go here, the untimely passing of John Prine was last week. He was a huge part of what you call the folk family. I would love it if you would recount a couple of your favorite stories of John Prine and knowing him for many years.
Yeah, one of my favorite moments, which was amazing because it gave me a personal anecdote, and that's what John was always about: pirate tales and anecdotes. But he got a laugh out of me so quickly. He then turned around and used it on the audience. I was like a test case in real time. In 2017, when we had, I surprised him completely with a tribute. He thought he was just going to play a normal set of his songs, and about an hour before showtime, one by one, artists such as Bon Iver, aka Justin Vernon, and Margot Price, and Nathaniel Rateliff, and Jim James, and Lucius, and the one and only Roger Waters of Pink Floyd fame, all kept knocking on his door, on his dresser, as a surprise, and said, let's work on a song together we do during your set. And so as John just kind of was shaking his head during the set, because he'd say, ladies and gentlemen, Margot Price, and then they would walk up at me, right before Roger came on, and he said, who's up next, Santa Claus? And it was just such because John loved Christmas. People know that. He literally is the kind of guy who many times leave his Christmas tree up all year round. He just really loved, and I think it was about the giving of the spirit is what I mean by that. And, his last album, The Giving Tree. And I just think that was what he was all about, was if I have it, I'm going to give it.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful, man.
He just couldn't believe. He's like, and at that point I was like, maybe Santa Claus might show up. I kind of looked over my shoulder and I started laughing, and he thought it was hysterical that I looked over my shoulder when he said, who's up next, Santa Claus? Then of course, when he got up and after Roger Waters played, he literally said to the audience, I wonder who's up next, Santa Claus? And I kind of like looked at him and I was like, that whole little parable is to me, experience I had with John is always about kind of poking fun, trying to if you could find fun and the silver linings in anything, John would do that. And I've listened to that set in particular because to have such an amazing array of artists of, call it a younger generation, go out of their way and pretty much no money. I mean, Roger Waters flew across the country in the middle of his own stadium tour. He had one day off. He flew across the country and then landed, took a car to a boat, showed up at the festival on a boat about 20 minutes before he walked on stage with John, came off the stage, waited for the end, shared one glass of wine with John, and reversed course and got on a plane and flew back and was in St. Louis the next day for his stadium tour. He literally flew across the country to sing one song. And I think if anybody questions the reach of John and his music and his giving spirit, I think it's one of the biggest artists in the world taking a day off, flying across the country to sing one song at America's oldest festival. I think that about says it all.
That's a testament. It really is. And I also think what you're doing for artists right now is a real testament to what Newport is all about. I'm not just speaking for myself. I'm speaking for many other artists when I say we've always felt like the festival's had our back, that you've had our back. And now you guys are really putting your Snickers bar where your mouth is. So we appreciate that.
I appreciate you, Joe. And for anybody listening, please do what you can to support live music, but musicians need help, and musicians and music is there for us in good times, and for me, even more pointedly, in bad times. And I feel that if the people that are creating the things that are helping me get through bad times are going through bad times themselves, it's only the virtuous good loop in order to do what we can to support them. So I appreciate everyone who's signing up for your podcast and listening, because that's step one. And I love you.
I'm sorry, Jay. I lost you for a second.
Oh, I just said I just said I love you, man, and I hope you stay safe.
Love you too, man. Thanks for supporting us, and also thanks for doing this interview again, because I was an idiot and screwed up the sound last time. So
don't worry about it, brother. All right, man. I'll talk to you.
Bye, Jay.
Bye-bye.
The first time I played the Newport Folk Festival was the first year that Jay took over. I remember arriving at the festival site after a red-eye from California. I was all of 25 years old, and feeling a sense of belonging. I've since been back to the festival a few times as a performer with this podcast, once with my wife and I just as patrons. We love it there so much. Nothing, though, has ever matched that first visit for me, and to give a sense of that belonging that I felt, that sense of just damn good, clean fun, I'd like to read you Charles Bukowski's classic poem, Nirvana. Not much chance completely cut loose from purpose. He was a young man riding a bus through North Carolina, on the way to somewhere, and it began to snow, and the bus stopped at a little cafe in the hills, and the passengers entered. He sat at the counter with the others. He ordered, and the food arrived, and the meal was particularly good, and the coffee. The waitress was unlike the women he had known. She was unaffected. There was a natural humor which came from her. The fry cook said crazy things. The dishwasher in the back laughed a good, clean, pleasant laugh. The young man watched the snow through the windows. He wanted to stay in that cafe forever. The curious feeling swam through him that everything was beautiful there, that it would always stay beautiful there. Then the bus driver told the passengers that it was time to board. The young man thought, I'll just sit here. I'll just stay here. But then he rose and followed the others into the bus. He found his seat, and he looked at the cafe through the bus window. Then the bus moved off down a curve, downward, out of the hills. The young man looked straight forward. He heard the other passengers speaking of other things, or they were reading or attempting to sleep. They had not noticed the magic. The young man put his head to one side, closed his eyes, pretended to sleep. There was nothing else to do, just to listen to the sound of the engine, the sound of the tires in the snow. Thanks to Jay for that interview. And now our next guest is the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Josh Ritter. Josh Ritter was born and raised in Moscow, Idaho. He began his musical journey on a violin and then a lute that his father had made before settling on a Kmart guitar. He went on to study neuroscience at Oberlin College in Ohio before ultimately changing his area of study to the self-created major, American History through Narrative Folk Music. At the age of 21, he recorded his eponymous debut at an on-campus recording studio. Post-college, while working odd jobs and playing open mics in Providence and Boston, Josh was spotted by Glenn Hansard of the iconic Irish band The Frames. He invited Josh over to Ireland for some opening slots, and the country soon fell in love with him. Hello Starling, his third album, would eventually reach number 2 on the Irish charts. In 2006, the release of his album, The Animal Years, produced by Brian Deck, brought him into the national consciousness here in the States, where he's remained ever since. His songs have been covered by Joan Baez and the Punch Brothers. He's appeared on Late Night with David Letterman and later with Jules Holland. He's recorded for Signature Sounds, V2, Sony BMG, and Ireland's Independent Records. In 2011, he made his debut as a novelist with Bright's Passage, published by Random House's Dial Press. and most recently, he composed the lyrics to Blue Mountain, the latest studio album by the Grateful Dead's Bob Weir. The New York Times has noted that he sets out to carry a world of ideas on a few basic chords. There is no limit to the depth and ambition of his songs. The Washington Post declared, "How refreshing and inspiring it is to encounter a young artist whose achievements match his ambitions." And author Stephen King has said of his work, "Songs like Girl in the War simply do not leave the consciousness once they're heard." Josh was nice enough to jump on the phone with me last week from his apartment in New York City. Josh, are you there? Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Loud and clear, man. Yeah, sorry, I neglected to tell you that I'd be calling from a creepy no-caller ID number.
Oh, no, that's cool. I just, mystery here with like a child's potty. And they sent it and it has room for one screw and one screw only, but the screw they sent us isn't long enough. So it feels like, I feel like a little like, I don't know whether it's me or the, but I mean it feels bad when they send you one screw and you can't put it together.
You can't put it together, and you can't run to the hardware store right now to grab a new screw. So
yeah.
So how is home life with you now? You're a dad of two now. How was adding the second one to your family?
Oh, it's been amazing. Yeah. Oh, incredible. Just awesome. So fun. We're just having. I mean, this particular period is wild. But like in general. But when we adopted Moxie 2 years ago, and she's rocking and rolling. She's just an amazing kid.
Oh man, that's cool. And from your earlier description, it sounds like you're in the potty training phase right now, which is always a lot of fun.
Yeah, we figured, we're here, we're hanging out. Let's do this.
Where is here? Where are you guys holding up for the pandemic?
We're in Brooklyn.
Okay.
In Greenpoint.
Man, right in the middle of all of it. What's it feel like in New York City?
Yeah,
right now?
It's very, very weird. It's very strange. Things are. The park is empty. There's like. From where I can, the little park across the street from our house is quiet and like the streets are empty and all you hear is sirens. It's bizarre, We're just is down.
Man,
but we're having a good time as a family, But we're over on month 10. So it feels like sometimes I think about us like we're on a trip to Mars. We're on a trip to we're on some sort of mission somewhere. This little family, and we're in the early stages.
Indeed, you can still see Earth back in the rear view mirror at this point in the trip.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, exactly.
Do you have a place at your home there in Brooklyn where that's kind of your studio where you can get work done, or is everybody just on top of you right there?
Oh, everybody's on top of everyone. I have a little I have a drawer where I keep my computer and my notebook, and my any little recording bits and pieces I have, but it all fits in a drawer next to my socks. And that's we have a very small sort of area. It's great. I mean, but we've always loved that since Haley and I met, and all through Bee's, my 7-year-old, all through her childhood, her early childhood, she was on the road with me and on the back of a bus, and so it doesn't feel strange to be really, really close to each other all the time. It feels kind of like normal bus tour life.
But at least with bus tour life, you can think about your house afterwards. You have something to look forward to.
Right.
But fair enough. Well, man, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about what it was like to tour with the dearly departed John Prine. You toured quite a bit with him at the start of your career. Can you describe how you got to know him and how all that went?
Yeah. I heard and fell in love with all, like him, with him, it's like, what song was the introduction like? They just kind of all fell in my lap all at once, that great feeling of like discovering an artist and then into their career and all the stuff, and then be able to hear what they're doing at the moment. It was like with John Prine, it was this is like an enveloping fascination that I had, and I remember like hearing all kinds of stuff, all kinds of songs, but then gravitating towards Mexican Home, which was just such a beautiful song about like all kinds of things. And it was so beautiful, and I've sang it, and Prine heard it somehow, heard that I was doing it, and invited me to come on tour with him. And that's how I ended up. I don't remember how many shows I did, but a lot, and like and some really beautiful, and I got to share some incredible stages with like a hero of mine, and so it was beautiful.
How old were you when you went and did those shows?
That was about 10 years ago. So mm-hmm. I was in my early, maybe 30, 32,
mm-hmm. Wow.
Around there. Yeah, something like that. And it was great. We I got to have a drink with him after the show, and like have some pizza sometimes, and it was just a beautiful. It felt, when you get a chance to tour with somebody who is like a longtime hero, and you get to see that they're actually like sweet, incredible people who have real hearts. It was one of those experiences.
Man, that's really cool that you got to know him, because I mean, from personal experience, I'm sure sometimes when you go to open for people, like you don't even get to see him for 2 seconds, but the fact that you got to spend some time with him around the whole thing, I mean, that's almost better than the playing of the shows itself, man.
Oh, for sure. It was like, I remember he was just so, I mean, and his band and all the whole crew, all of them were just such friendly, good people that they treated you like a compatriot, and not like some kid who was like, just coming in and coming and going. Like they understood what it meant to open Prine,
That's really cool. I was listening to...
And I think maybe Prine did to himself too. Maybe, I don't know, but like it felt like sometimes like, I mean, it was so special. Like, I wonder if he ever really was. What a special... Sorry to bother. Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're good. You're good. I remember you told me at the time, because I had just opened for you for the first time around that time, and you said, man, I just opened for John Prine, and, every night after his show, he just goes back to his hotel room and mixes his own drinks there. And I thought to myself...
Yeah.
Because his latest album, he says when he gets to heaven, he's going to have a vodka and ginger ale, and that's the first thing I thought of. I was like, damned if he didn't probably mix one of those for Josh Ritter in a hotel room.
He did. I remember it was so funny. I remember we were this really special night. We were in Bakersfield, California, and it was just like it felt like a very particularly wind-blown kind of day and evening. I don't remember what it was like, the show itself, but I remember going back to the hotel room, and that a little bit of that empty feeling you get sometimes if you're if you're not expecting it, and it comes around, and I kind of knew what the rest of the night held for me,
Mm-hmm.
But then Prine was like, "You should come and hang out with us. We're gonna hang out after the show tonight." And I was like, "Oh, that is just so cool." So I went, and I went, very nervously to the hotel room, and knocked on the door, and moth that had been flying around the hotel room, and Prine opened the door, and he was like, "You're just in time. We're about to give it a name." And and it was just such a strange, funny experience to be in the room with all those guys, and like trying to catch this big bug. It was a very, very weird moment. But he just treated me so well.
Yeah, that's something out of a David Lynch movie, trying to catch a moth in a hotel room in Bakersfield with John Prine.
Oh, yeah, I know. No kidding. Yeah, you're so right. Yeah.
That's great, man. And, the other thing about him that's very similar to you, he kept a long-time band with him. His guitarist, Jason, and his bassist have been with him for just decades, and that's the same. Is that one of the reasons that you've kept such a consistency in your band through the years? You noticed him do it, or did that come from somewhere else for you?
Oh, it certainly comes from I think from watching my heroes, make decisions to either side of that, to decide to move on to other musicians and to keep a steady stream of new energy coming in, or whether with a group of people who you count on to themselves personally develop, and that's something that I've found was important to me, that I really liked about Prine or Springsteen, or is that with their own artistic vision, they were very they really used people's, own artistic visions, all their band members, to continually move the larger vision forward. And I always thought that was cool. And, it's so cool to see someone like Jason, just rocking it every night and playing this amazing stuff. And always bringing, his new thing to what Prine was doing. I just think that's so cool. And yeah, that's I think that's has influenced me. Yeah.
Did I seem to remember you saying back in the day, maybe I'm remembering this wrong, but was there a period of time when you were considering signing with Oh Boy Records with Al Bonetta?
I remember times and he was just really he was really cool. I don't know that I was I remember meeting, I don't know if they were interested or at all. I don't remember exactly, but I remember going out with Al to a show, to a David Rollins show at Grimey's at midnight, and just having a total blast, and seeing Nashville for the first time, and before that moment, I Nashville was always it always felt like we were always on at 4:00, and before even the staff showed up, and we never, but and then that night, there was no show or anything, but just, Al showing us around Nashville was such a cool moment.
Oh, for sure, man. Yeah, he was old school Nashville.
Yeah. He was such a wild character, man.
Yeah.
So wild.
Well, what are you working on these days? I mean, you were supposed to be on the road right now for a very long tour. It was just going to be you and Zachariah on the road. Yeah.
Yeah. It's supposed to be, I right now it's, I think Haley and me have been talking about what, the way that, we want to get through this is to get through it just all, healthy and happy, that's and I mean, I think that means that each of us has to find our own, because we're here in this, in this, and in this little tiny house, and we're all the world is pretty scary out there, and we're just trying to each make our own creative, jumps and things that, I don't know. We're both trying to do our own thing to stay sane, and I'm on a lot of writing right now, which is a lot of fun. I'm working on a lot of prose, which I love, and I'm working on these silo sessions, which are these kind of live webcasts, which I do every Tuesday, which we raise money for local New York charities, and it's really, really fun. I've gotten to, I've done stuff like covering record, or I've had some special guests on. We did a picnic one night where we put everything out on the floor and put a bunch of candles out. It was really fun. All just things to stay busy and engaged, and creatively has been I felt like the thing that I need. I need to be working.
Yes. Yeah, I feel you on that.
Yeah.
I think musicians have been really late to the just streaming video game. I think, there's some musicians, you have like 14-year-olds who do, Beatles covers on YouTube that get like 10 million hits, but then, there's not a lot of people who are singer-songwriters doing their own thing that have taken advantage of this, that medium before.
Yeah.
And I think it is a real mistake not to have, frankly.
It's so interesting. Like, I agree. I think that that just there are those those like stars, those huge stars that are out there doing all kinds of stuff that I don't know about because I'm not plugged into that particular scene of music that's getting shared in whole new ways. It's really exciting. It's exciting. I think you're right. I mean, in this particular way, but it's so fun to just to open up the computer, put in like the one microphone.
Yeah.
I'm not a gear guy, and suddenly I can play and I can perform, and I feel like I can offer that I really want to offer is some sort of comfort. However, just the comfort of knowing that somebody else in their house, and they're playing music, and that's happening in the moment, I've always thought about gigs as being like these little campfires that people kind of wander in from the darkness and sit around for a little while.
Yeah.
And I feel like if we can do that, and give it some semblance of heat from just online, then maybe that's a worthy thing to have happen.
Indeed. And, I was talking to someone who's on the business end of music recently, and they were kind of worrying, well, man, all I do is live shows. So if this is all going to go in the streaming direction right now, I'm in real trouble. And I was telling them, man, look, people are doing this and they're watching this right now because this is how we have to do it. People have to have music. People have to have performance in their life. When things get back to normal, whenever that is, which I think it'll be a long time, people aren't going to want to continue to just sit in front of their computer screens. They want to warm their hands around that proverbial fire that you're talking about. They'll be back out.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's odd. And I think it feels a little like, looking, you're on the tightrope and you can't look up or you'll lose your balance, and you can't look down, like you'll scare yourself to death. It's like you kind of have to live every moment in the moment and try not to look too far ahead at how long it could be before we're all able to get out again and see our families and all,
yes.
And then do what we're supposed to do for a living. And it's a funny time. I'm writing a lot of I'm excited to be working on the stuff I'm working on right now. But I wish that I was being pulled away for every other reason.
Yeah, really, man. Yeah, there is kind of this feeling with this right now that, we've had it, given the years that we were born in post-World War II America, we've relatively had it pretty good in the scheme of human history. And for me, this has kind of been one of those deals where I kind of just looked up and said, oh, yeah, that's right. Like, history didn't stop. We're still in the ever moving forward stream of history. We're like a part of that, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We're not divorced from history, and we're not divorced from in the most basic ways, like that we are a human organism, you know. And yeah, it's a very funny time to, and the realization of that and is so incredible, and to think that there is this, like, you know, I agree with you.
Have you been in contact with the dudes in your band? How's everybody doing? How's everyone else getting through it?
Everyone's doing good. Yeah, everybody's doing good. Like, you know, they're all. Working on stuff that they can do, and it's just sort of, I think, still in the stages of waiting to see what happens next. You know,
yeah,
we're all like all of us. So that's what I mean. I think we're all. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm waiting to see what happens next. I wanted to tell you, I played in Boston in February, and I got a message from Zachariah, and he was like, hey, I have enough room to house your band if you guys want to save a hotel room. I said, yeah, of course, man. So we went to his house in Watertown, Mass. And have you been to this new mansion of his?
Yes, yeah.
Have you been to this damn thing? There's like a servant's corridor to it, and like trap doors, and it's incredible.
Oh, yeah. It is a true. It's like a true, like, Haunting of Hill House kind of, like, sprawling man. Yeah, it was amazing. That's the there. That's awesome. Wow. No ghosts.
No ghosts. But I was pretty drunk when I went to sleep, so if there were, they wouldn't have disturbed me. But yeah, man, what's funny is I looked at it and I was like, Zach, I'm so glad that you have this house. This is the perfect house for you to, like, you will be the person that takes care of all, like, the traditional molding and crown molding and puts everything back together. But this personally is like a nightmare for me, like, if I owned it myself.
Yeah, that's how I felt. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like he is really good at that stuff. He's amazing. I'm like, he really knows what he's doing. I am having trouble putting together this toilet training
with the one screw. Right.
Potted. Yeah. So I have such respect for people who are capable of almost anything.
Well, right on, man. Well, I just wanted to call and check in and see how you were doing. Thanks for saying hello to our audience here who's stuck at home.
Oh, thank you.
As well. And yeah, man, sending love up to you and your family, man.
Well, thank you, and thanks a lot for thinking of me, and I hope you're doing good. I know it's a crazy time. But thanks for talking. I appreciate it.
Okay, man. Talk to you soon, and hope to see you face to face as soon as that is a feasible thing to happen.
Hell yeah. That's awesome. I'm okay, yeah.
Thanks,
Take
Josh.
care, buddy.
Peace. That's our show. Thanks for being here. It was brought to you by Bandzoogle. Built by musicians and for musicians, Bandzoogle is an all-in-one platform to build a beautiful website for your music. Use promo code TWS, the initials of our podcast, TWS, to get 15% off the first year of any subscription. Josh Ritter's latest album is entitled Fever Breaks, available everywhere music is sold or streamed. If before we meet again, you sit down to write, please remember, an expensive drug habit is not a song, a compelling Instagram account is not a song, and most importantly, reverb is not a song. So let all that take care of itself, and for you, just keep your eye on the song.